Welcome you guys to another video here on my channel. My name is Josh Neal. If you guys don't know me, I talk NASCAR, MMA. Been in the gambling space here and there over the past couple of years talking about NASCAR. Been relatively successful in daily fantasy sports in NASCAR, but this year I'm dedicating this channel to all things NASCAR. Weekly talk, DFS, gambling, you name it. I'm going to be going over that each week. So with that being said, today's video, I'm going to be going over the 2023 NASCAR Xfinity Series team and driver preview. I've compiled a list here on JSki. Just going over new additions to the garage, new additions to the teams, all that stuff. What to expect out of each team and who I like to win the championship. But with that being said, let's start out, obviously, with the winner of the 2022 Xfinity Series Championship was Ty Gibbs. Now, Ty Gibbs goes on to the mothership in Cup Series at JGR. Who is going to JGR is the question a lot of people are asking. Well, we have those answers now. JGR is now fielding a 3-car organization. The number 19 Toyota was previously Brandon Jones. Brandon Jones goes to JRM, Junior Motorsports, where he'll drive the 9. But fielding that 19, the majority of the races will be, I believe, Ryan Truex. Some races will be Trevor Bayne. I think it's going to be a rotating car in that sense. That program is going to be fast regardless of who drives it. So obviously it's going to be whoever can bring sponsorship to that team, which is no surprise in the end. It's funny though. I would expect, that car to field some road course racers that are pretty good in that series. So I would expect some things like that. The 20 car, which you didn't really see much of last year. The 20 car used to be Christopher Bell. They kind of got rid of it, but it's kind of like the new 54, if that makes sense. The 20 car is going to be John Hunter Nemechek. John Hunter Nemechek comes over from Trucks, where he was a KBM driver. John Hunter Nemechek used to be in the Cup Series. I'm very high on John Hunter Nemechek. He proved in a little bit of the time in the 18 car last year just what he could do in terms of his talent in the Xfinity Series. He was once here before with Chip Ganassi. So, I expect high things from John Hunter Nemechek next year. Expect him to be a contender for the championship, win a couple of races here and there, really prove himself. He could have won a couple of different races last year. One comes to mind is Richmond, when him and Ty Gibbs just kept rear-ending each other. Tough beat there, but John Hunter Nemechek will be fun. He drove the Sam Hunt racing car a lot last year, so he's kind of up to date on the stuff. I expect him to be very strong. Rounding out that field is the 18 car. Sammy Smith brings Pilot Flying J into the series. Sammy Smith, he ran a couple of races in the 18 last year, a couple road courses. I think he ran some oval races as well, but young talent. Has been in the ARCA series. He's proven himself there with some Toyota equipment. TRD's behind this guy. He's going to have all the sponsors, everything he needs to be successful. He's just going to be another, Christopher Bell type guy where he makes his way through the JGR pipeline, and I would assume he drives a cup car one day for them, just depending on their situation. So Sammy Smith, young talent. I think he needs probably 2 to 3 years in this ride to get some experience, prove himself, potentially win a championship. But I expect big things from him this year. Moving on to the second powerhouse team, or the powerhouse team, however you look at it, the Junior Motorsports squad owned by Dale Earnhardt Jr. and his sister. So with that being said, starting out, the number 1 JRM Chevrolet is going to be drove by Sam Mayer. Sam Mayer was very talented in ARCA. He got the full-time gig last year, proved some things. He had some hiccups, just wasn't very consistent. Had some times where you could argue that he was going to win some races. I think just the experience alone is going to pay off for him from this past year. I expect him to win a handful of races this year. Really take that second year sophomore, no sophomore slump. I think it's going to be a sophomore where he continues his trajectory forward and upward. I think they had some crew chief swap arounds, if I'm not mistaken, there. So maybe a different viewpoint that can help him out along his way there. But I do expect good things from Sam Mayer this year. Moving on to the number 7 Chevrolet, Justin Allgaier, Brant Hellmans. You know the deal. This guy's been a staple of the series for some time now. He's going to win races. He could arguably be the championship favorite. Him and Josh Berry, for sure, are definitely going to compete for many races this year. As long as Brant's behind Justin Allgaier is going to have a seat. So he's very talented, most experienced driver in the garage, I would say, now. So that definitely lends its hand in many situations. But if JRM continues this path of just dominating in the Chevrolet camp, I don't see any way they don't make another run at the Final Four again. So big things from Justin Allgaier. He could potentially win 4, 5, 6 races. He's obviously not trying to get to Cup again, I don't think. I think he finally realizes, his bread is butter in the Xfinity series, and why would you want to mess that up? So expect big things from Justin Allgaier this year. Probably going to be leading the stable of JRM drivers. Moving on to the other JRM Chevrolet, it's going to be the number 8 Josh Berry. Look, this guy didn't have any sponsors a couple of years ago. Now he's got Bass Pro coming on board, Tire Pros, just all sorts of different companies. He's getting Taylor Moyer back in his back pocket, so them two have a very good relationship. Expect that. Excuse me. Expect that team to grow. Definitely expect him to win similar races to Justin Allgaier. I think this will be a flagship car in the series next year. Short tracks, mile and a halves. This guy's, he's not really that good at super speedways, but on any other track, man, road courses and super speedways not really his thing, but any other track, man, you got to really put him in the top 5 of contenders, and I'm going to be betting on him plenty this year. And finally, the new driver replacing Noah Gragson at JRM is Brandon Jones. Brandon Jones comes over from JGR as previously discussed. Not a fan of Brandon Jones, if I'm being honest. I don't think he's got the talent, but he's obviously going to have the equipment as he has been, where he can come up there, at a mile and a half where the talent is, sometimes not really warranted. He could definitely contend and shake and bake his way to a win or two. He's very good at the road. He's decent at road courses, so he's always going to have a chance there. Decent at short tracks, decent at mile and a halves. I don't really think he really is really good at anywhere. So I think, that's going to be a challenge for these guys. I don't know exactly how he's going to beat those JRM guys on equal equipment, but we've seen different things. So not really high on Brandon Jones per se, but Menards is behind him. He's going to have good equipment. We'll see what happens. Don't really have much to comment on that. Moving down to, I would say the third organization in the sport is Colleague. They're going to have, a good balance here. They got Chandler Smith that comes up from trucks, and KBM was a TRD guy. TRD shook things up with KBM. So KBM's now Chevy. So this allowed Chandler Smith to test free agency. Colleague jumped on him, got the 16, replacing AJ Allmendinger. Look, he ran a handful of races with Sam Hunt Racing last year. Didn't look too good. I think it's going to take a year for him to get a year under his belt, similar to Sam Mayer, I would say. It's going to take him a year to get the experience. I think we should expect more from him in 2024, but I could be wrong. He could just be a great talent. People are saying, he's a top prospect. I think right now you got to look at him and Sam Mayer as two of the top prospects, in terms of youth and development. So I don't think Colleague's going to push this. I think Colleague sees a I think colleagues see Chandler Smith as a long-term play in their Cup cars. So keep him in there as however long you need him to be. And just realize he is talented. So just give him as much time as he needs and move him up as it goes. So, I'm going to keep my expectations neutral for him this year. If he proves me wrong, good. But if he does worse, I'm not going to be shocked. I think it takes a while. Moving on to the number 11, Daniel Hemrick. Obviously won the championship with JGR, his final year there. Moved over last year. Colleague as a whole wasn't really good last year. Colleague, they had their moments. They won at road courses. Obviously, we know that Colleague's going to have a good road course program. But to say that any of these guys are really good at road courses now is going to be the challenge. You were specializing AJ Allmendinger to win these road courses, but who's going to win that this year? Hemrick's probably the best of the three on the road courses, so I think he could sneak up and win one or two. I think any win would be great for them outside of Allmendinger this year, outside of a restrictor plate track, so super speedway. So, I expect a bounce back here for Colleague in terms of Hemrick and Castle. I think Hemrick's definitely the most talented driver of the three at this point in time, so you could see them really leading the way in that 11 car. Now, the number 10, Landon Castle, a lot of things are still up in the balance on a sponsorship, but he did sign a multi-year deal, I'm pretty sure, so we'll see how it goes. Not really many sponsors that I've heard that are hopping on board with Colleague, so that's a work in progress. But for me, Landon Castle's always got the most out of his equipment. Last year he didn't really have too many good runs, but again, Colleague was really down on, your typical mile-and-a-half track. They didn't really have anything other than super speedway and road courses. So I expect this year they will improve. Expect Hemrick and Castle to be up there and contend for more wins. Hopefully narrow the field from JRM and Joe Gibbs Racing. So, don't really have much to say on him. I do expect him to contend for wins more, but I don't know. We'll have to see. Moving down the list, we go to Richard Childress Racing, Austin Hill, Sheldon Creed. Austin Hill returns in the 21 car at Richard Childress Racing with a plethora of sponsors. Look, this guy won Daytona last year. He battled for many wins. It seemed like at the end of races, he didn't really have strong performances at the beginning or middle of races, but somehow they always kept improving their cars, and Austin Hill adapted really well, and he showed up at the end of races. So I'm not going to count these guys out. I would expect them to get a win or two on the board, make the playoffs, make a run for the championship. And, obviously he's the best super speedway racer in the series right now, so can't really count him out on those tracks. Sheldon Creed, look, I think last year is similar to what I think these other truck guys are going to experience. Sheldon Creed hadn't really drove anything other than trucks really before that. Jumps into the Xfinity series. I think a lot of people had big expectations for him. What ended up happening, he didn't really live up to the hype. But again, second year, I do expect him to continue that trajectory. I do expect him to see improvements. He showed us flashes, but you've seen all the tracks now. You know exactly what you want in your cars. I do expect him to contend for some wins, and hopefully, show us why everybody was going crazy about RCR signing him. RCR spent a bunch of money last year on Xfinity, but you see what's happening here. If you can look down the line, KBM moved to Chevrolet. If you move from KBM, the old days, you used to just go to Joe Gibbs. Now, KBM Trucks is Chevrolet. Build the Chevrolet program some more, send him to RCR. RCR could easily probably have a 4-car stable if they wanted to, but the question is it really worth it at this point in time? Not really. So I'm just foreshadowing down the line, but I think this is a good year to see, is Sheldon Creed going to be worth it? If not, he doesn't really have that much backing. Willen's returning this year, so I think if he really wants to make some magic and, continue that hierarchy trajectory, he's going to have to prove it this year. He's left a lot of people with stuff to be desired coming off last year. Moving on, let's see here. What do we have next? I mean, you kind of run out of the the top guys. You do have Storhaus Racing, which brings up a very good topic here. Cole Custer moves from the Cup Series back down to Xfinity Series, where he once dominated along with Tyler Reddick and Christopher Bell. And honestly, Cole Custer could be a top 3, candidate to win the series. I think Cole Custer is going to win multiple races. Every time he hops in an Xfinity car, he's a contender. We seen it last year. We seen when he was there full time. Look, man, he can flat drive a Xfinity car. The Cup cars didn't really fit him for whatever reason, but when he hops in an Xfinity car, it doesn't matter the track. He seems to take on really well to it. He was a contender at road courses. He was a contender at 1.5 miles. I mean, they obviously, he was filling in for Joe Graff, I think a couple of races, or David Starr, but when he hopped in those cars with the SHR Alliance, they were so much better. So I expect Cole Custer to win 3+ races next year. Really, really excited to see him. You got to say he's a championship favorite. He's got to be a top 2 or top 3 favorite to win. I mean, if I'm looking at the sportsbook now, I would definitely put a bet in for him to win the series, because I think that highly of Cole Custer and Xfinity cars. His teammate Riley Herbst, Riley Herbst leaves a lot to be desired, to be honest with you. He's been in the Xfinity Series now for, I think, 3 to 4 years, running part-time with JGR, and a full season with JGR, I think. Now he moves over to SHR and the 98 car. When Briscoe got out of it, it slowly sunk. Herbst just isn't it for me. Now, albeit, you have a lot of talent leaving the series with Graxon and Gibbs, so you do have some races, but you also have Custer coming back, which kind of nullifies one. So, I mean, there is chances, I guess, for him to contend, but I don't know if he can beat his own teammate most weekends. So, we'll see what happens. I'm not expecting too much from him this year. He's going to be a top 10 driver, but when you just take a look at him, man, he's a good road course racer compared to everybody else, but he shows up in some short tracks. But the 1.5 miles, I didn't really see much to say, well, let's go crazy over him. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not a big fan of Riley Herbst. I think he's got some talent, but without the Monster sponsorship, I'm not too sure where he would be. Moving down, we start talking about these second-tier programs. Let's start out with Big Machine Racing. Parker Kligerman getting the full-time ride there in the 48 Big Machine vodka car. They get ECR engines. They won with Tyler Reddick last year. They're going to be a solid program. I expect him to be contending in the top 13, 14, 15 cars every weekend. They didn't really have a full-time driver last year. They did have, what was his name? I can't remember who they started with for whatever reason. It's slipping my mind. But when they had him full time, he was more of a road course racer. Couldn't really judge what they had on the ovals at the time. But now you got Parker Kligerman, who seems to get the most out of his equipment. He's not really had top tier equipment since he left Penske. He's been doing the pit road reporting for NBC Sports here lately, so he's going to have a busy plate. He's going to be running part-time trucks, full-time Xfinity. I think that only helps him in each series. I expect him, could he slip up on a road course and win? Absolutely, I think he can. We've seen what he can do on road courses and truck series in the brief stints here in the Xfinity series over the last year. So, he could definitely slip up and win, a race or two. Not going to put much stock in him winning the championship, but I think he's going to be a solid top 15 car. Let others make mistakes. He's one of the most experienced drivers we got in the series now. He's veteran. He's grizzled veteran. He knows people. He can get advice from others. So I expect a very solid season from him. I have no reason to doubt Parker Kligerman at all. Next we go to probably, if we're talking about mid-tier, we got the Allen Motorsports cars, but I don't even know if they're going to have. I know they're probably not going to have 3 cars. I know Anthony Alfredo, last time that I had checked on it, he was probably going to BJ McLeod for a 3rd car. Not too sure on that though. I definitely don't see them going 3 cars. I think that really hurt them. When you don't really have one good car to begin with, and you run 3 cars, it definitely is going to take a toll. So I think that really put some shock into their systems. We have Sam Hunt Racing, which I think is a solid team. Kaz Gralla going full time. I think everybody in I know fantasy industry loves Kaz Gralla, but Kaz Gralla is a very good, talented driver. He gets the most out of his equipment. He ran a lot in the trucks last year, ran some in Xfinity, but he's a really good road course racer again. Sam Hunt, they have the JGR Alliance, so they're definitely going to have some fast cars. I wouldn't say every week, but they're definitely going to pick and choose their strengths. And I would expect them to contend for some wins at some point. Don't know if they're going to get there or not. The 24 car, Sam Hunt, they're going to 2 full-time entries. I know that Connor Mozak, don't really know much about him other than he ran ARCA in the late model stuff. Not too sure on him. He must have some backing, I would assume, with some good sponsorship. But he's going to run the majority of the races. Like I said, they're going from 1 car to 2, so I don't know how that works for a smaller team. So we'll see what happens. I don't expect much from him starting out. Austin Wayne Self is having AM Racing. They are having Brett Moffitt come on full time, and I think Brett Moffitt's an excellent driver. They will be racing under the Ford wing, so I think that's really good for Ford. They're starting to put some more cars out there. They have the Ryan Seed cars, which we'll touch base on here in a second. But Brett Moffitt, he ran full time with AOUR, Our Motorsports, the last 2 years. He's experienced, and if you need a guy to come in and start a team, he's the guy to do it. So don't really know what we'll see from them this year, but I do expect him to be a top 20 car. Don't know if I can go top 15 yet, unless there's a good chance they bought Penske cars. I think that's definitely a possibility there. They could have bought Penske chassis and all that. Looks like they have Roush Yates engines, so no disappointment there for me, because Ryan Sieg uses Roush Yates engines, if I'm pretty sure, and they ran pretty well last year. So definitely good to see Ford upping their activity in the Xfinity series. Jordan Anderson. So this was just announced yesterday, which I'm a big fan of one of these guys. Parker Retzloff joins in the 31 car for Jordan Anderson. Love Parker Retzloff. He proved a lot last year in his limited schedule for Ryan Sieg Racing. Now the 31 car, this is their flagship car. I'm not too sure on sponsorship and all that, but I would expect him to get a lot of in-house funding as well, just because I think he's a talented driver, man. He's kind of quirky, which, we kind of need that kind of personality in the sport. But at the same time, man, he can drive a car, and I'm not going to put anything against him, man. You can wear whatever as long as you drive a car really well. So Parker Retzlaff, he's a guy that I'm really high on. I don't know if he'll, surprise us from what we've seen last year, but I do expect him to be a consistent top 20 guy. Maybe he's battling 15 to 20 every week, but I think that's a good course, and who knows, maybe they sneak up on somebody and win a super speedway. Who knows? Jeb Burton, man, this guy, he battles for sponsorships. You give him that, man. I'm not sure the talent's there, to be honest with you, but man, he works his ass off to get sponsorships, and in this day and age, sponsorships everything. He obviously had some good runs with Colleague and JRM, but man, when you're with those cars, I mean, if you don't run well, what's wrong? Something's wrong, right? So I'm not sure he's talented enough to be in the series. I think his name carries a long way in him just having access to a ride, but obviously you got to have sponsorship, and that's where it goes back to working your ass off to get that. So we'll see what happens. I don't expect much. He ran in Our Motorsports last year. I kind of think, Our and Jordan Anderson ran very similar last year, so I'm not expecting too much from him this year. Moving on down, we got Ryan Sieg Racing. Obviously, CMR Construction rules the roost there. Ryan Sieg will be back. Roush Yates, this guy, he's a top 15 driver. Kind of similar. I think you'll see some similar things to him and Parker Kligerman. I think they could run into each other quite a bit this year, just because I think I kind of feel the same about those two teams, if that makes sense. He'll run the 28 car and the 38 car, just I guess to collect some paychecks when the sponsorship's there, but the 39 car is the in-house car, and Kevin Starlin's a very good crew chief. I would expect similar stuff. He had some good runs there last year. He had some run-ins with Ty Gibbs, but he was put in situations on late restarts where he was battling for wins, that was staying out. But a top 10, top 12, top driver, like I said, they're getting that money from Ford, so I do respect that, and I do expect pretty good things from him this year. Hopefully to see him win a race. I'd love to see Ryan Sieg get a win. We've seen Jeremy Clements win last year, but that Ryan Sieg program seems to be a step above them at this time. Let's see here. Who am I missing from this mid-tier? So we have the Jesse Iwuji. Now, normally I wouldn't put these guys in that middle tier, but we've seen Kyle Weatherman run really well. And when they had the Hendrick engines, Kyle Weatherman was a top 15, top 20 driver. And the chassis and stuff, I'm not sure where they're getting them, but I know that engines or Hendrick and that Hendrick horsepower really showed there at times last year. So Kyle Weatherman's a really good driver. I think he just doesn't, have the money behind him. But I do think he's a very good driver in the series, and would love to see him stick around. We'll have to see. We'll have to see about how they're doing at the beginning of the year to get a better read on them, just see where the money's at and how they're running that organization. DGM, Alex LeBay, he doesn't have anything set in stone, but I'd be stunned if Alex LeBay isn't running at least 3/4 of the schedule for DGM. He's a very serviceable guy. It just seems like that team's always lacking horsepower. I'm not too sure where they get their engines at, but it's definitely not to the caliber of the other teams. So for me, DGM needs to prove that they can, spend a little bit more for the horsepower. They have Chevys usually. But I need to see some new developments from that team, or they're just going to be stuck in that the JD Racing stable top of team. Josh Williams returns, I think, in the 92. He flirted BJ McLeod last year. Quickly realized that was crazy and shouldn't have done that. He returns. I'm not big on Josh Williams. He's a very respectable guy, blue-collar type of guy, but there comes a time where you're like, call a spade, man. He's just a serviceable driver in the series. Jeremy Clements has touched on him earlier. They make their engines in-house, so you never really know what you're getting from them. I heard that he was spending $15,000 on tires, and he didn't really seem too high on that to test in Charlotte here. I think this week or next week, but it just seems like they don't really have the budget they once had, if that makes sense. So he's a very respectable road course guy. Can you really count on that? Sure, he could slip up and win a road course race without Allmendinger and Gibbs. That's totally plausible. He's a veteran of the sport. You know what you're getting from Jeremy Clements. If the horsepower is there, he's a top 12, top 13 type of guy. If the horsepower's not there, he's a 15 to 22nd type of driver. I know this because I play fantasy almost every week in the Xfinity series, and that just seems to be where he goes. And if you look at times and the data and all that, he's just a consistent guy, mid-pack guy. And if the power's there and they get the car right setup wise, he's gonna contend for a top 10. So got to temper expectations with that team. Brandy-Built Motorsports, nothing out of that camp yet. I know they're looking for a guy that can put in the car with sponsorship. I would love Brandon Brown to get that that ride. I don't think he can find sponsorship at the time. Would be stunned if he doesn't run some races in that car. But, a guy like Joe Graff, who has sponsors behind him, and SS Greenlight said that he wasn't coming back. I would expect some guy like him or Chris Wright. Again, Chris Wright carries sponsorships wherever he goes. I would expect them to fill the seat. So they don't really have the upside of a Brandon Brown. We know what we're getting with those two. But it is what it is. We'll wait and see with them. That brings me to SS Greenlight, and like I said, they do have that Stewart-Haas, that Stewart-Haas alliance. I would expect Ryan Preece. I think Ryan Preece will probably run some races for these guys next year. They got the Ford. They're one of the lone Ford teams out there, so I would expect Ryan Preece to get some seat time. Who knows? Maybe Chase Briscoe wants to run some races like Cole Custer did last year. We'll see what happens with that. So they're probably looking for more of a sponsorship, but they want some guy that's going to go contend. But David Starr, he's going to bring some money. I don't think they've announced that he won't be back, so I would expect David Starr or a JJ Yaley type of guy in one of those rides. As far as I know, they're going to have both cars full time, so it could be one of those just revolting doors like we see in the sport. Whoever has money that week can go race. That's really it for the mid-pack guys. At this point, you're looking at you do have Alpha Prime, Tommy Joe, and Cesar Baccarella continue to field a mediocre program. No offense to these guys, but they are just taking whoever can dish out money. And, we've seen Stephen Parsons. We've seen Ryan Ellis. We've seen them guys, run top 20 in these cars. And Tommy Joe, you got to take this into account. He was a one-car operation there 2 years ago. Now, last year, they announced he's going with Cesar Baccarella. They're going to have two cars. A lot of people thought we were crazy, and you could see that. They did step down in performance, but they also had some runs in the 44 car where they were decent. You get the full-time sponsorship with Forever Long with Jeffrey Earnhardt, which is really big for that kind of program. You get some much-needed money flowing into that organization. That seems to be the primary car. They also have the 45 car and the 43 car. 43 seems to be Ryan Ellis's part-time car. But I think there has been some rumblings that they will run 3 full-time cars. I don't think they will, but I think that's their plan right now. So I'm sure that the sponsorships are still coming in for them guys, so I'm sure we'll have more names to come. But you got Sage Karam, Stephen Parsons, Leland Honeyman Jr., Jeffrey Earnhardt, Ryan Ellis right now. I'm sure Tommy Joe will step in. Cesar Baccarella, we know he'll step in and run those super speedways. races. But I don't know what to think about these guys, to be honest with you, man. They have the horsepower at the ECR engines, but everything else always seems to. These guys seem to run into problems once they have a fast car. They'll just fall apart. The parts failure, or whatever. It just always seems like they're having some kind of problem. So hopefully in year 2 or 3, they can make some strides there and clean that up. But after that, man, you got BJ McLeod, you got the JD Motorsports guys, you got Brennan Poole, which I'm very excited to see him back. I think he's going to run the 6 car for JD Motorsports. You got Bailey Curry, who should be back in the 4. Those guys, you know what you're going to get. They're probably going to run 20, 25, 20 to 27, 28 in those JD cars. BJ McLeod, you know what you're going to get there. Probably 29 through 30th. Barring, some weeks they'll pop up there and have more money and more funding, and they'll run near 20th. But nothing to really go home about there. You have Kyle Larson running a Hendrick car. I would assume William Byron's probably going to run that as well at some point. Dale Earnhardt Jr. will run one of his 5th JRM cars at some point. But that's really it. That's really it for the Xfinity preview. If I had to go out on a limb and, you're asking me who I think is going to win the Xfinity Series Championship, I think this year you're going to see more than ever how experience matters. There's a lot of young talent in the sport. But I would expect it's going to be a 3-horse race between Justin Allgaier, Cole Custer, and John Hunter Nemechek. I just think those 3 drivers alone, you have experience, you have talent on most tracks. Josh Berry doesn't excel on road courses. Justin Allgaier seems to be pretty well-rounded. John Hunter Nemechek, we know, is pretty well-rounded, and we know Cole Custer is as well. So I think when you're looking at it, AJ Allmendinger made the Final 4. He was really strong at road courses, not so much, he was really good everywhere, I would say, but he really wasn't great anywhere else other than road courses. So, he's well-rounded, but all those guys were well-rounded everywhere else. Could Josh Berry sneak up there? Sure, but I think it's going to come down between those 3. And if I had to put money on, like I said, I would bet Cole Custer. I just think Cole Custer, there's something about these cars that Cole Custer excels at better than everyone else. But that would be my pick to win the series championship this year is Cole Custer. With that being said, this will do it for me on this episode of the 2023 NASCAR Xfinity Series preview. If you guys enjoyed this, be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'll be having more NASCAR videos within the coming days and weeks. So be sure to hit that subscribe video. Join me along this journey this year. If you haven't, guys, be sure to sign up for DraftKings this year. It's going to be fun. DraftKings Daily Fantasy. It's really fun. It makes the races a whole lot better to watch. It also makes it worse if you're watching trucks and it's a disaster in terms of crashes and all that. But with that being said, I'm gonna hop off here. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, week, whenever you're watching this. That being said, peace out.